Hello, friends. I made this for. My name is Lauren. It has been so long since I've been here to just chat. And if you've never been here before, hi, hello. I am a artist, art ritual facilitator, art teacher, tarot reader, and all around just witchy human being. I also really hate toxic spirituality. Now, listen, I want to give the caveat that, as always, this is never to yuck anybody's yum. But sometimes we just need a little bit more reflection, a little bit of expansion outside of perhaps our window. Our window might be this big and maybe we need to expand it out and just look through it, right? You might have noticed I haven't been making any reading videos or anything that just wasn't related to art ritual lately, and that is because I am going through some pretty intense shit in my personal life. I've taken a back seat from the Subnormal podcast. I'm hoping to pick that up again soon. A hiatus was needed, right? Because shit be fucked up, and sometimes when shit be fucked up, you just gotta let certain things fall to the side. Mental health is important. Do what you gotta do, right? I think we all can agree with that. Why I talk about toxic spirituality and share these things is because I personally have been very much directly harmed by toxic spirituality. As someone who has been diagnosed with OCD, I find that my obsessive thoughts can take root in these certain ideals. So my hope is when I share these thoughts that if you are similar to me, maybe it's helpful, right? That's really all I'm trying to do. So the topic of today, everything happens for a reason. Does it? Does it? Now, this is actually something that I have I've been questioning this idea for a while, okay? So I used to teach in inner city North Philly, okay? And teaching in this environment actually had me question a lot of my spiritual beliefs because what I was seeing, what I was witness to was outside of my previously lived experience of honestly in a very, a bubble of safety and protection of growing up in a suburban neighborhood in Texas, right? A totally different experience, a totally different view of the world. And so when being confronted by shit being pretty fucked up, the concept of everything happens for a reason was not holding water. There was nothing but holes. It was basically a pasta strainer, right? This concept literally no longer made any sense because if everything happens for a reason, why was I witnessing so much fucked up shit happening to people who did not deserve it, right? Why was shit happening in a way that it just perpetuated a cycle to not support anyone who was growing up in that environment? How come even the company I worked for was showcasing greed and all of this wickedness while claiming to be ally, right? Claiming to be a champion of these children and helping them, right? So all of that has kind of led me to be in a different place with my beliefs. With that said, I'm revisiting this now for two reasons. I'm deciding to finally talk about it for two reasons as it relates to me and our collective. So as always, my experience is just my lived experience, but that's all it is, right? And it does inform how I feel about these things. So for example, I'm going through some really fucked up shit that I honestly can't even talk about at the moment because it's not really appropriate for me to share per se, even though it affects me. It's the health of a family member. So do I have the right to put it on blast? No. But let's just say this is the scenario. Some fucked up shit is happening in my family. If someone were to come to me and say, well, everything happens for a reason, I would have to say, excuse me, the fuck what? And this is my issue with the concept is, well, this is happening to you because you're getting something out of it. Why should someone else's suffering be my lesson? Why should my own suffering be a lesson? Why should I be handed this via someone else's pain because I need to learn something? You see what I mean? It's kind of a selfish, weird way to look at the world by saying like, well, I'm going through this hardship so that I can learn something. And listen, here's the deal. We can always look at, if it helps you, there are always things we can take away from a scenario, right? We can always say like, in this moment, I'm learning to be more resilient, or I am learning new skills to support me through a really hard time. But is that why the thing happened? No, and honestly, it takes away the agency of other people, and it takes away their lived experience, right? It kind of reduces it down to something that is selfish, honestly. And that's not always the case. But if someone were to be like, oh, you taught in that like terrible place so you could learn all these lessons. Well, what is the point for these people that I served, that I worked with? Now we're taking away the agency from that group of people and saying, well, that's all for my lesson. And it's just not, the math is not mathing, right? So that's one of the things that really sticks out to me. And this honestly did not truly become encapsulated until a coworker and friend of mine lost a sister. And I remember her taking time off, coming back, and even mentioning, if you want to tell someone something, if you're trying to encourage someone by saying everything happens for a reason, this coworker of mine, she lost a sister. So anything that's related to, well, everything happens for a reason, again, it takes away agency from the person that this bad thing is happening to or has happened to, and saying that happened so that your agency could be uplifted. That doesn't make sense. If we want to believe in a world where we all have agency and all things are for our highest good, the math is not mathin'. How are we to say that those things were for the highest good of that person? And that is a point I want to just kind of point out right now. And that is, not only is this a selfish way of looking at the world and like viewing everything as like, well, how does this relate to my experience? It totally ignores that there is a bad thing happening for perhaps no reason to that person, except for how it influences you. That just doesn't sit well in my spirit. So once my friend and coworker brought that to my attention, it really had me do some reflecting about how that was not supportive to hear, how that was actually really harmful, because it was degrading the experience and the loss and the life of another person, right? Now let's bring this back to what I always like to say, and that is that toxic spirituality is really just repackaged and repurposed Christianity. At least in the West, at least out here, at least in these streets, the American streets. And the fact that people don't see those connections makes me want to jump out this third floor window that I am near, right? So here's number 2 reason why I thought I would just share this, which, again, to encapsulate what I just said, fucked up shit happens, and it's really hard to imagine why, right? That's why humans like to say, everything happens for a reason, so that we can justify the terrible things happening and at least have some sense of peace. I'm not trying to steal your peace. I'm not. But if you have a friend who's really going through it and you want to support them, I want to reiterate what my coworker said to me. Don't do that shit. Don't do that shit. That shit is actually very fucked up. Don't do it. So I'm gonna stick by that, okay? But back to Christianity is kind of the root of so much of our repackaging within toxic spirituality and just spirituality in the West in general. Let's be honest, it's fine. You can pick up things here and there, but let's connect it back. Let's connect the dots and see, where does this actually go? And I came across a TikTok I thought really helped encapsulate it. But in regards to Trump saying that God protected him from the bullet, right? Let's unpack that, because again, that goes back to the mentality of everything happens for a reason, right? God intervened. How is that kind of problematic? How might that actually belittle the person who died, right? Why? This is not to get political, okay? That is not my intention here. But this idea that God intervenes on an individual level is very strange to me, because ultimately it negates all the bad shit that happens to other people, to good people, or even just blames them, as in they didn't do the right things and that's why they died. It was God's will. It was God's will. Listen, again, not to yuck anybody's yum, I really do believe in God. And I really do believe in certain magical shit. That's why I'm a witch, baby. But there is a certain delusion of grandeur here that is really fucking weird. And I think we have to really unpack that, because when someone like Trump says, it was God that saved me from that bullet, we are now ignoring the fact that God did not save a different person from that bullet. That person died. And that is where I see this as a really insensitive thing. Again, individual people can choose to do whatever they want to do with their lived experiences. If that is how you process what happens to you in a way that supports you, I understand. But we also have to understand that projecting these sorts of ideals and projecting these sorts of grandiose visions of self can actually hurt other people. Other people might internalize that in a different way. So again, not to yuck your yum. Love your yum, baby, but it ain't for us all, right? And that's okay. It is okay that maybe this belief is helping you in one moment, but doesn't help you in another. And I think that's sometimes the hardest part of being a spiritual person, is realizing that sometimes our beliefs help us through certain stages, but are not able to take us through to the next. That's the whole thing about the chariot. And I talk about that with the chariot all the time. It is a structure that supports you, but eventually we have to get up out of the chariot and keep walking, because it's not moving anymore. It's no longer serving its purpose. So when we're talking about what happened at the Trump rally, it's a tragedy. Because somebody died, because people got hurt, okay? In my honest opinion, argue with your mama. People were hurt. Violence like that is never acceptable. That's my thoughts and feelings on it. Again, argue with your mama about it. But this whole idea that God protected one man from the bullet, but not another, kind of speaks a lot to someone's idea of and value of the self. And it doesn't actually give a good context of what is happening, right? Because ultimately, again, to just bring it back, someone else did die. So was it God's will that their life be ended in this way? And if we're thinking about it in that way, did that person deserve what happened? And this is why, again, going back to everything happens for a reason, God's will, it kind of comes off as, it comes off as prosperity gospel. Because it's ultimately saying, I made good choices, that's why good things happen to me. As if someone getting sick is their fault. As if someone who didn't have that same outcome deserved that negative outcome as opposed to your positive one, right? So that's where the math is not mathing. That is my thing. So if you are a spiritual person, if you're a spiritual baddie, you're doing your witchy shit, you're manifesting, you're working on your karma, well, like whatever it is that you're doing, I want you to kind of take a step back and acknowledge how everything happening for a reason might have a huge fault in it, right? And again, this isn't to shame you watching this video or to shame anyone who believes these things. But can we just take a pause? We'll just take a pause. And take a step back and go, maybe this is not actually doing what we want it to do. And that's okay. We can acknowledge and admit that this is not what we truly, truly wanted, right? We can admit that this is not actually making sense in the context of everything that I'm just kidding. I was about to quote Kamala. Anyway, coconut tree. That shit's hilarious to me. But it's not funny. It's funny, not funny how she talks about certain things. But anyway, that's my point. I hope I didn't ruffle any feathers. I hope that at the end of the day, this is just a different perspective when it comes to these concepts. Because I get it 100%. Everything happens for a reason. I used to believe that very deeply because there were things that I was like, oh, I can't make sense of this. And then an aha moment would come forward for me and go, you know what? Maybe this did happen for a reason. And now I can feel better about that bad thing that happened, right? Maybe I can use that mentality in the past has really served me for self-reflection and trying to understand better about how an experience may have actually taught me something, right? But when it comes to certain things, I think we like these concepts, especially in the world stage as we see them now, or if you're going through really difficult things with family, sometimes the wound is just the wound. And I think as a society, that's a hard thing to admit or a hard thing to come to terms with because it gives more chaos to the world. It takes away that safety of structure, and the chaos can be really hard. And that's not to say that you just have to magically wake up and no longer be within the chaos. But what is the chaos really? The chaos is certainly a teacher. The chaos is certainly a tool. And it is also another invitation to surrender. Sometimes fucked up shit just happens. Sometimes it happens and we can understand a deeper meaning on an individual level. Beautiful. Love that. Maybe the chaos allows for something really beautiful to happen out of something crazy. And because of that, it might be even more tempting to justify it or justify other terrible things as we continue forward. But the truth is, no one truth is universally always right, right? And some things are just fucked up, and that's okay too. I share this because I'm coming to terms with certain things, certain chaos within my own life. Again, if you've been here for a while, you know I've been kind of dropping off on many things and replacing them with like dog fostering and not being so much on the internet, because you gotta do what you gotta do to feel better about the world that we're in, right? Anyway, what are your thoughts? I'd love to know if you feel like sharing. Has this sort of thought process really shifted who you are, what you're doing, or what you're thinking? I would love to know your reflections. How am I wrong? Tell me more. Like I said, prosperity gospel has never sat well with me. That's why, this kind of goes back to the idea of the manifesting myth. And I have a whole video on that, like how this idea of like controlling your thoughts and your feelings will like raise your vibration, right? It's all this idea of policing oneself. I think we have to really like be wary of those sort of things, because when we're policing ourselves, our thoughts, or looking at a situation and going, well, this happened because I was good, or this happened because I was bad, then we start to get down the rabbit hole of not so great, right? And that's really all I'm trying to share in this video. Again, I hope you are well. I'm hoping to get back to my regularly scheduled stuff now that I'm starting to get out of the super big depression that I've been in. I mean, it's going to be there because that's just the state of things. But anyway, I love you. I hope you've been treating yourself well. Don't forget to do some journaling, pull some cards, take a nap, drink some water, and until next time, bye-bye.